a minute or two.
It's a little dot to
actually go live. So hi everybody, or everyone, as we're starting to gather. It is about 3 minutes before 8 o'clock, and so we are going to just take a couple minutes here to warm up and set up and make sure that we sound good and you can hear us and all of that good stuff. And then we'll get started right at 8 o'clock. How is everything over there on your end, Atieno? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Good.
You're not breaking.
You can hear us and all of that good. Okay, awesome. Sorry, if there was a weird little overlap there. I accidentally clicked on the YouTube channel and then heard myself. So that was done. Now my dog is back with her thing. I'm just gonna hide that. Okay, hi everybody. So as you guys are coming online, if you want to participate in the chat, you do have to be able to log in to your YouTube account, which if you don't know that you have a YouTube account, you might actually have one because you might have a Google account. And it's not a huge deal because we are not, since this is, we're going to be talking about some deeper things and, creativity, the deep role that this plays in our lives. We know that not everybody is comfortable publicly sharing about this kind of thing. So the way that we're going to facilitate will allow you to participate and absorb without having to necessarily share your process with the whole internet. So if you can't log in and chat with us, that's perfectly fine. You can always contact either of us by email or on Facebook if you want to share thoughts later, if you have questions. But if you would like to chat with us now, we will, I don't know, maybe, Atieno, yeah, you can see the chat too. So if you do want to chat with us, we would love to hear what you have to say. But if you don't have access to that, it's perfectly fine. Any other, and then the other housekeeping piece that I will mention is that we are recording this session. So if you can't stay for the whole time, if you have to pop in and out, if you can't quite go as deep in some of the exercise portion as you want to because you're listening while you're making dinner or as you're winding down from your day, you will be able to access the recording and go through this later. And, of course, as long as technology works in the way that we hope and expect that it will. Okay, so we're right at 8 o'clock. So Atieno, is there anything from a housekeeping end that you want to take care of before we dive in?
No, I'm totally brand new to this format, so I'm gonna let you take the lead and follow your lead.
Okay, great. Well, if you would be so kind, I feel like maybe we did sort of talk about asking each other questions, so I feel like this is within bounds, but I also feel like maybe it will surprise you a little bit. But since we're here on my YouTube channel, I'm assuming that many of the people who are watching will know a little bit about the role that creativity has played in my life. I've talked a lot about the way that I see the healing work that I do in herbal medicine as being directly related to what I spent a large part of my professional life doing and focusing on acting and storytelling, and that as different as these two things seem, that I actually really experience healing and creation as being two parts of one greater whole. But since you are probably new to some of the people who are watching, I would love if you'd be willing to share a little bit about your work and the role that you see creativity playing in healing life, personal healing, collective healing, just a little bit of like your philosophy and experience of this in your own life.
Wow, thinking back over my whole life, I'm like, how do I keep this answer short? Right? I've always also been interested in healing and creativity. Not so much physical healing. I'm also one of Melanie's clients, and she has healed me. So I have great respect for that. For me, it was about emotional healing and trying to figure out the nexus between the arts and creativity and emotional healing. And there is a very strong nexus. So I started looking into psychodrama shortly after grad school, and found a real spiritual home with psychodrama, because psychodrama is so, it's a lot like coaching, the field that I'm in now, in that people are creative and resourceful and whole, and just helping them get access to their own spontaneity so they can dream again and create the life, the future that they want, and get on the stage of life. So we give them kind of a safe laboratory, the stage of psychodrama, in order to rehearse new roles that they feel blocked from. So psychodrama, because it was so almost like the Quaker idea of the divine spark, had a lot of philosophical underpinnings that really, really appealed to me, not to mention the methodology, really, really effective. And so I studied that for a couple of years at St. Elizabeth's Hospital and got certified. And I guess that's kind of I don't know, that's one little snapshot way of answering your question about my life and my field, and just about creativity generally. I think you can do anything, whether it's healing or something else like construction, or anything that you do. I think you can be in a creative space, and to me, it's about being kind of receptive to a part of your brain that isn't completely in control. Just being receptive to ideas, able to kind of like shift the way you look at something, or combine different things. And that I see that happening with people in all kinds of different fields. Scientists do it, musicians do it, everybody does it, because it's like we're tapping into something that we all share.
Yeah.
Part of there's sort of a like being part of a larger whole, when you're talking about creativity. Whereas I think sometimes we think of it as like this pressure to be, it's another pressure we put on ourselves. Like, I need to be beautiful, and I need to be creative, and I need to be a great mom, and I, all these roles in my life where I need to excel and be perfect. And actually, I find it more helpful to think about it as being in a receptive mode where you're allowing something to flow through you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I really, there are two threads. So one thread is really coming from what you're sharing, and there's another thread that's coming from the client session that I just had right before this call. And so there's one part of me that really connects with this piece that you mentioned about the relationship between creativity and the divine spark. That, in most world traditions, with the modern scientific tradition being one of the few notable exceptions, most of the world's religious traditions conceive of an aspect of divinity, God, whatever, higher power, at least one aspect of this totality has to do with being like the divine creator and the first cause, like that the divine is the animating force that brings all of life and creation about. And so there is this sense that whatever our own spiritual orientation is, that it can really feel like in the act of creation and in the act of just being open and present enough for it to bring something new forward, that it doesn't really feel entirely like you. It feels like this other thing that maybe is closer to a divine spark, or to, something larger and bigger than yourself coming through. And how different that is. Because I think it leaves so much more room and permission for like what the outcome can look like. How different that is from evaluating creativity on the basis of saying like, well, my craft that I made. So like a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm going to get all of these cute little tapes and I'm going to make crafts with these like cute tapes with design on them. It was so crazy that I don't know where I got this idea. I really struggle visually. I'm not someone who is inclined towards like arts and crafts and like visual creativity. And I like everything I tried to make with this, like with these like printed tapes, it just like looked, it was total crap. It was awful and I hated it. And I felt bad. And I feel like so often that's the metric that we have. But like, if I had started from the place of, instead of starting from the place of like, oh, I saw somebody's blog somewhere where they had all of these cute tape projects, or I saw something on Instagram and I want to be creative and have a cool house like that. Instead of starting with the product in mind and then getting disappointed, if I start with my own just sense of openness, curiosity, and receptivity, and I have that feeling of something flowing through me, for me, the way it usually shows up is with writing or cooking, or as I'm sitting with a person, you know, a friend or a client, or you know, who knows, as I'm sitting with a person and an idea comes forward. And I never really get caught up in judging the product because I trust so much that like that feels so good in the moment. Like if there's editing to do later, there's something to do later, I can do it. But it's such a different experience than when you're like in that evaluative mode that you're talking about of like, am I a good mom? Am I pretty enough? Am I creative? You know?
Yeah. And it, what you just said reminds me of how we planned the retreat that we have coming up next month, and how, as the three of us co-facilitators were talking, it felt whenever one of you would open, I mean, I know we stumbled around a lot at first trying to figure out, well, where is it going to be and all of that, but it just felt like we were kind of three different heads of the same being or something, you know. Every time someone speak, it felt like, yes, that's right, that's it, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I think the other piece, and I don't know, maybe we might put a pin in this, but the other thing that I think is really interesting and noticeable is like, yes, the ways that the three of us will be in sync, but even more powerfully, what happens when among the three of us there is a different perspective or a disagreement, and what it feels like to handle that creatively or within the context of generative space. And I think this is actually so relevant for day-to-day life. So I don't know, like, how would you describe the difference between like a disagreement that's not creative and a disagreement or like where things kind of rub up against each other, and actually that tension helps to move things forward somehow? How do we get to that?
How do we get to approaching conflict that way?
Or yeah, experiencing it that way.
Well, I guess when we're creating something like a retreat together and we have a disagreement, it's easy to be a yes and, you know, the classic improv yes.
Say a little bit about that, because maybe not everyone who's watching has the familiarity of yes and.
So I did do playback theater for a number of years, which is a modality that came out of psychodrama and is a form of improv. It's personal story theater. But I'm not an improv expert by any means. I haven't done like true comedy improv. But I am familiar with the principle, which is whenever your partner on the stage with you makes an offer, you know, let's pretend this is a, you know, they don't say that obviously, but they'll take the action in some direction. Rather than shutting it down and saying, no, let's do this, you say, yes, you know, that pipe you're holding is an umbrella, and it's raining actual cats or whatever. You take it and you say yes to it. So that's the yes and principle. And I've often, because I also have a master's, heard that principle used as a way of, you know, how to further, rather than, you know, just like listen, like where are you coming from, and then and add. So I guess your question, how do we, I think it's harder to be a yes and when you're really, really needing the other person to be a yes and, right? Like you need space from them, and it's hard to stop and give space first. You have, like, you're caught up in your emotions and your needs and your fears, and you're the past often, and sometimes past experiences are playing in a present moment. We do this with psychodrama with the encounter because we bring so much into conflicts from the past, and sometimes the other person is like, where is this coming from? And we don't even realize that we're treating them and seeing them in a certain way that's not even accurate based on our own past experiences of someone else. And from the past is looking at us through that present person's eyes, and we don't even realize that's what we're acting from. And so when we can own those projections, and when other people can see what we're doing, like understand a little bit about our past and have compassion, I think that's when you get through to the yes and to the just having space for the other person's perspective. I don't know.
Yeah,
Answer.
no, I think that's a good answer, and I think there's also something about you know, if we are talking about creativity as something that's distinct from artistic production or making a craft or the things that like when we narrowly define what creativity is, I think that what it really means is being oriented toward newness and possibility. And so when I am in a conflict or a disagreement, and I have you know, one place that this is, you know, sort of possible in my life, and I think in a lot of our lives, is with, you know, political or ideological disagreement. You know, I have many family members who have different political beliefs and opinions than I do. And in fact, my intimate partner, my boyfriend, has different political beliefs and opinions than I do, like quite significantly. And there would have been a time in my life when I would have been so closed to any other valid way of any other way of seeing the world besides like mine and like the people I identify as like being like me, that any other way was valid, that I would have probably been closed. Like my family, well, I'm kind of like stuck with them, but like I would have been closed to dating this person who sees the world quite differently. But now the way that I work with it is like, well, there's going to be there's a tension here, and within this tension, there's a possibility of something new happening that I can trust on a basic and deep level, that out of any difference, something good and new will emerge, rather than out of this difference, I'm going to have the same fight that I've been having like with my dad since I was however old or whatever it is, you know? So I think there's just this orientation toward newness and possibility. I'm sorry, Charlotte is like licking me quite aggressively. I don't know if you guys can see this, but like I'm being bathed as if I am a puppy right now, and it's like really distracting, but I also know that like this is part of her trauma recovery experience, and like she just needs to do this right now. So I apologize, everyone. So yeah, so I think it's something about newness, and there are so many more pieces here, but I think that does kind of tie directly into the image of bringing life back to the bones. That is this anchoring image that we're using in this exploration of creativity. So I would love to know from you, Atieno, like because you were the first among the three of us who really kind of started using the phrase dry bones and like pulling that out of the story. And I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to read the story to everybody in a little bit. But I think first I'd love to hear like what your experience was, Atieno, of opening to this story and receiving that image. Because I think I'd like to have you kind of show everybody, like we'll do it naturally, but kind of show everybody what it's like to listen to a story with your own creativity activated. Because instead of just the story is separate and it lives somewhere else and some other creative person wrote it, there's a way of listening to a story where you are actually taking in and giving imaginative life to the very images that are within the story itself. So there's a participation, and I think that you did this very strongly with this particular story. So I'd love to hear a little bit about it, and then maybe we'll move into the story and the exercise.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is being raised Mennonite and having, read the Bible through however many times and looked at in church however many Sundays. The story of, the biblical image of dry bones was already in my psyche. That speaking a word can reanimate something that's completely dead, like so dead that it's like the bones are scattered, and this organism is completely a part of the past. So, I'm not incredibly ancient. What am I? I think I'm 44. But I think as I was reading this story, I was just thinking about parts of my, dreams that I had that died along the way, or how I thought things would turn out in my life. Although I never really planned ahead at all. But, parts of myself, ways I used to see myself, and motherhood's a very transformational thing where you become incredibly different. You feel different to yourself than you did before. So that was an experience that I've had in the last 7-8 years. And I guess the point in my life where I am right now, I was looking for, now I'm sleeping through the night. My kids are 5 and 7. And I was looking for a creative outlet. I was looking for a way to live in my creativity more. And I found I had gotten into a mindset of hunker down, kind of like I can just kind of, if I can get through, as opposed to a sort of carpe diem, alive, life is delicious. And I thought, I think this is, you can see this with people as they age. Some people keep that joie de vivre, and some people lose it. And I think it's actually hard. It's an interesting question that I'm starting to struggle with at this stage in my life. Like, how do I keep that? How do I keep that curiosity? And something different might happen at any point. I haven't seen it all. Things that are terrible, we might actually be able to do something about, which was actually something when I was young. I don't know if I had a certain amount of cynicism about, trying to like re-encounter that gives you just by being life. It's supposed to be like on the sidelines, or comfortable, or cynical, or preoccupied with my own small world, or I don't know. The dry bones felt to me like I have a lot of areas that are dry in my life, and how can I just start to like pay attention to them and maybe invite something in. Who knows what will happen, but if I at least like am open to it. And so that's out to Nikki and to you and said, what if we did a retreat? And then we, I mean, that's when we started talking about the dry bones, right? We started reading that book because you were mentioning it, and oh my gosh, I got to catch up. So I went to the library because I had always heard about it and loved the quotes that I'd seen from it and never read it. And so I wasn't even aware until you said that I had pulled out that dry bones image so strongly.
You were emailing about it all the time. And so, yeah, so the book that we're talking about is I don't know, it's going to be all backwards, is Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And this very story, in fact, so I teach a class called Nimble Heart, Unwavering Soul, which is about emotional resilience, developing emotional resilience through herbs and healing foods, movement, self-care, and storytelling. And I think the first year of Nimble Heart, I don't think I planned this until the very end, but I read this exact story. And I remember really distinctly, and for all I know, you might be watching, dear person. If you are watching, I'm thinking of you. You'll recognize yourself, I think. but I think you were speaking for many of us when you had the response to this story of feeling a little bit repulsed and a little bit terrified of this character. And I would like everyone to be aware that this image that's about to come, this story that's about to come, is going to have some, you know, in order to really bring something back to life, we have to go to the places where things are dead or have died or are ugly or have been rejected and cast aside. So the part of creativity that people love to romanticize, but do not like to actually talk about that much in a real way, in my experience, is that a lot of the most important creative discoveries that you will make in your life will come from the boneyard of things that have not gone how you wanted, loss, disappointment, low moods and valleys, and really tough times. Creativity is something that helps us cross a gap. And if everything is easy and all of our needs are met and we're just like eating, you know, we're being fed grapes on a lounge chair somewhere, there's no yearning of the soul. Actually, in Chinese medicine, oh yes, I get to bring this piece in. In Chinese medicine, the liver is seen as the general of the body because it's courageous and smart. And the liver houses the part of the soul that is called the hun, which is like the embodied soul. And so it's as if this part of you that's aligned with like creativity and moving out on the front lines and like getting across, like that, the only thing that's going to inspire a courageous and smart general and that's going to inspire your embodied soul is a challenge, is like an actual gap to get across. And we find these sometimes in the places where we least want to look for them. So unless you have anything to add, Atieno, I think maybe we can listen to the story of La Loba now with that little bit of setup. And then we're going to go from this story. So we'll maybe breathe for a moment, but we won't do a lot of talking because we want you to be to really feel the feelings that you have from the story. And then Atieno is going to take the attention and lead us through a visualization exercise that builds directly from the story. So if you would like to have something that you could write on, if you need to jot something down, if you need to get in position to be able to listen and really be present, this is a good moment to do that right now at the beginning of the story. Okay. And I apologize, I'm going to just be reading into this book, but I will try to be present with you visually as well as with my voice. La Loba. There is an old woman who lives in a hidden place that everyone knows in their souls, but few have ever seen. As in fairy tales of Eastern Europe, she seems to wait for lost or wandering people and seekers to come to her place. She is circumspect, often hairy, always fat, and especially wishes to evade most company. She is both a crower and a cackler, generally having more animal sounds than human ones. I might say that she lives among the rotten granite slopes in Indian territory, or that she is buried outside Phoenix near a well. Perhaps she will be seen traveling south to Monte Alban in a burnt-out car with the back window shot out, or maybe she'll be spotted standing by the highway near El Paso, or riding shotgun with truckers to Morelia, Mexico, or walking to market above Oaxaca with strangely formed boughs of firewood on her back. She calls herself by many names: Bone Woman, the Gatherer, and La Loba, Wolf Woman. The sole work of La Loba is gathering bones. She collects and preserves especially that which is in danger of being lost to the world. Her cave is filled with the bones of all manner of desert creatures, the deer, the rattlesnake, the crow, but her specialty is wolves. She creeps and crawls and sifts through the mountains and dry riverbeds looking for wolf bones. And when she has assembled an entire skeleton, when the last bone is in place and the beautiful white sculpture of the creature is laid out before her, she sits by the fire and thinks about what song she might sing. And when she's sure, she stands over the creatura, raises her arms over it, and sings out. That is when the rib bones and leg bones of the wolf begin to flesh out and the creature becomes furred. La Loba sings some more, and more of the creature comes into being. Its tail curls upward, shaggy and strong. And La Loba sings more, and the wolf creature begins to breathe. And still, La Loba sings so deeply that the floor of the desert shakes, and as she sings, the wolf opens its eyes, leaps up, and runs away down the canyon. Somewhere in its running, whether by the speed or by splashing its way into a river or by way of a ray of sunlight or moonlight hitting it right on the side, the wolf is suddenly transformed into a laughing woman who runs free toward the horizon. So remember, if you wander the desert and it is near sundown, and you're perhaps a little bit lost and certainly tired, that you are lucky, for La Loba may take a liking to you and show you something of the soul.
So we're going to actually reverse roles into this story. That's a psychodrama phrase. It means we're actually going to just put on different roles in this story through this guided visualization. And
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, Atieno. Can you come a little closer to your microphone? Maybe?
Yeah. How's that?
That helps a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're gonna put ourselves into the story through this guided visualization. So I'm going to invite you to just allow, mainly. You don't have to do a lot of work with this exercise, but allow things to come to you as they will, and follow the suggestions that I have or action that occurs to you. So this experience is unique to you. Everyone's going to be having a different one inside their mind. But this story is about an old hag, and she seeks out what is dead and discarded. And then when she gives her full magical attention to making it whole and beautiful, it bursts into life as a wolf who becomes a woman and joyfully runs through the desert. So we're going to give our full magical attention to parts of ourselves right now. So I invite you to just allow your imagination and your intuition to play for a few moments and just see what emerges. So as Melanie said, have something to write with and capture, or at any point along the way, anything that you want to. If you're listening to the recording, you can pause it. And even if you're not, you can go back and listen to this exercise again later. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. And take a quick scan of your body, just noticing any sensations from your toes up your legs, so and arms, your shoulders and your neck, and up through the top of your head. Let your face relax. Another deep breath. Now imagine that you're walking through a wasteland. It's too hot to walk in the desert during the day, so you've waited until twilight for this journey. You have a wheelbarrow with you, and you can hear it creaking as you push your way through the twilight You see the streaks of sunset fading in the sky. Then you feel your wheel bump something. What is it? You stoop and shine your flashlight and you see the white gleam of a bone. Is it the bone you've been looking for? And it is. It's the last bone that you need. So take a moment and allow that bone to take shape in your mind. What is it? How big is it? What part of the skeleton is it from? Clear image. What that bone says to you or about your situation right now. Maybe it's a delicate little ear bone or a skull or a femur. And let it speak to you maybe about what is missing for you. Maybe what it represents. If you have a skull bone, is it trying to tell you to empty your head because it's too full? Or maybe it's giving you some strength and support from what you're going through in this moment. Just whatever that bone is and whatever it represents, notice. And if nothing comes to you, it's not important. Just put the bone into the wheelbarrow. Now you're going to hasten to your workshop. Skeleton. So see the wolf skeleton in front of you and add that last bone. Polish the skeleton like it's precious metal. Now we're going to take a moment to sit and think about the song. What song does this creature need? Whether you're a singer or not, you're going to sing the song that's the magic that brings this wolf woman to life. So your creativity and your intuition are going to make up an incantation. You can sing it out loud or write it out in a stream of consciousness or just hear it in your mind's ear. But you're not going to be editing or judging. You can imagine if it helps you to break into this space of creating a song, which may feel unfamiliar, that you've suddenly unexpectedly been called onto the stage to play the role of Loba in front of an audience and you can't refuse. Something's at stake, it's too big, and so you have to come up with something. You could imagine stepping into the role of sorceress or divine creator. And you can put anything at all into this song. There is nothing wrong in this process. This is going to be a powerful song. It can be a song of blessing. It's going to be an efficacious song, meaning it like actually really does bring a creature to life. So it's reality creating, wish fulfilling. It can be a song that rebukes evil or deadening energies. You are actually going to command the bones to come to life. You're going to describe that life and why it matters. Your song could be just one word or phrase over and over. It could even be a song that already exists on the radio.
Somebody needs to hear. It can be a wordless song. You can start this humming. These sounds. Doesn't have to have words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But stay with that process of your song until you watch the wolf come to life and run into the desert night. And if you prefer, you can do this a different way and actually play a song you already have as you visualize the bones coming to life. I like to listen to India Ari's I Am Light, but you may have another favorite song that can play in the background as you bring this creature back to life. Let your imagination see that happen. So we're going to take a moment just to let you sing your song. Now you're going to step into the role of the wolf in the story. Keep them closed and imagine yourself running joyfully under the moon. And transforming suddenly into a whole, beautiful, laughing woman. Really allow that emotion of that to permeate you. Just imagine what that feels like to be that wild, wild woman. And take a deep breath. Place your hand on your heart and seal in the goodness that you took in from your song and your moment of rebirth as a wolf woman. I want to take a moment to thank spirit or source or your intuitive self for whatever you received and to claim it as real. So again, if you want to do this exercise later when you're in a more conducive space, and just listen to it or remember it and just visualize that story as you actually experiencing it. You get to be that reanimated creature. And I would love if you would share, my email address is just my name @gmail, @Atieno@gmail. I'd be very curious to hear any thoughts or insights that came to you. I also, even though I was talking, had a few little bursts of insight that I want to write down. And I also like to invite people to translate what they do in their minds into action. So if you pick one action that you're going to do this week, and it could be anything like taking a walk barefoot or, more of Melanie's herbs, something that has to do with self-care or, picking up the phone and making a phone call to someone you love that you haven't talked to in a while, journaling, anything at all. I think it's important to put into action, to translate into action the things that can happen very solipsistically within us and to give expression, because that's, I think, the loop that keeps inspiration flowing in our lives and keep, that's how we create, is we act on our ideas. So write down something that you want to do. Maybe it's cutting out a negative habit or, whatever it is. And see where that action takes you in terms of your next creative.
I love it. It's funny because inevitably when teaching material like this, I'm trying not to do this. I want to teach the class that you need to hear, and I have to just trust that will happen. But I end up teaching exactly what I need to hear and like saying to myself what I need. And so my experience with this was really being struck, like the wheelbarrow hitting the bone. That, oh yeah, Melanie, the what's going to get you over this next creative hurdle in your life is exactly lying in the place where you don't want to look at, and like the thing that you don't want to address and be with. And the bone that came for me was a whole rib cage, and it was very it was like I could hear the music of it, almost like I could like playing the rib bones, like a washboard kind of a thing, and then really feeling the difference of like what it's like to be in my wild, like reanimated animal self, with the heart is parallel to the ground, and there's a certain speed and kind of like self-containedness with that. But then as a woman, the biggest transformation from wolf to human woman was that my heart is here and out, like vulnerable and present and out and being shared with everybody, not like, you know, facing the ground. And not that one is right or wrong, but so I think, and I did hold myself back because I wanted you guys to be able to hear your own songs. But like I really just wanted to start like humming and just like making some sort of like inarticulate song that then like moved into whatever. So I know that that's a lot sometimes for people who didn't like go to acting school and do all kinds of really embarrassing and out there things for a really long time in front of a lot of other people to get over those fears. So I know that's a lot for some people to do, but I really do encourage you to, whatever your comfort zone is with this exercise, push yourself just a step beyond it. Like, don't make yourself feel scared or unsafe by any means, but like go just a step beyond what's comfortable, because there's going to be something, there'll be something really nice waiting for you there, I promise. And if nothing else, just do it by yourself in your room. And then if it sort of is a little weird, nobody has to ever know. You don't have to tell me, Atieno, like no one will ever know that you sang to yourself in your room.
Yeah. And sound waves, there are people who believe that they are, you know, just as effective as drugs or herbs or
oh yes,
or, you know, that
it's energy,
you know, yeah, and it does shift you. So you can, I believe, actually just follow whatever your voice is doing and trust that it's working on you in the ways that you need without you having to understand it cognitively with your mind. And it would be an interesting experiment. And that's why I said I would love to hear everyone's experience with this.
yes.
And it can also be music that you create. It can also be music that, you know how like when you do a card reading, you kind of run your hands along to the one you feel you should pick, or supplements are like that. Like if you kind of tune in, you're like, oh, I think I need this one, and you pick it right off the shelf or whatever. Let your intuition guide you to a song that you need to hear, and let music be a healer in your life. I was going to sing tonight. I really was going to sing the Indiari song, and I decided that I would interfere with people's own process. But when I remember Louise Diamond had a guru who was Navajo Buddhist, and she ministered through the drum and song. She'd talk for a while, then she would play, and you could feel the teaching come into you. So that's just a little plug for the power of sound.
Yes. It's profound. And I think without, again, like, I mean, I could do a whole 20-minute digression on this, but I won't, because I know where we are with time. But there's a way that we all are built, just as we're built for creativity and kind of bringing things back to life. We are built to be able to feel, to get the truth of something through the feel of it. And those examples you're giving, Atieno, I can feel really out there to people, like, well, how could I sit with a plant and know what it's good for, like what its medicine is? Or how is it possible to just meet a person and like feel the signature of their gifts and their wounds? And these things are all completely possible, and it's not just for unusually gifted people, but we've just been trained out of it. But the place where I think it stays the longest is with music. That like, we've all had that experience of like the first time you hear a song and something about it, you get a feeling from it before you know what the lyrics mean, and before you know the backstory, or like you haven't understood it with your head, you've felt it in your heart and in your being. And you know, music is really designed to do that. And so you can absolutely trust yourself, like when your intuition is like calling you toward a song, or to dance like with a song, you know. All of these things are physical energetic and emotional medicine, like big time. So just because you don't have to like go to some fancy center or pay somebody a ton of money to like listen to a song and dance to it in your room does not mean that it's not serious medicine. Really, really doesn't mean that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think taking seriously, you know, wasn't just something that happened and went away, but that you've been transformed, and owning that. You know?
Yes.
Like really, like claiming it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well,
I'm curious if we could hear from folks out there, any of their thoughts about all these topics.
I would love that. There's no way for me to tell whether or not the people who are here with us right now, we have a small group of people gathered. A couple of you have been moving in and out. I think maybe someone's having connectivity problems, but we have a small group. And I can't tell whether or not you guys are able to comment or not. So I'll just say, like, we are very open to having you comment in the chat. I don't see that yet, so I don't really want to wait and have a lot of dead space just in case people aren't able to. But by all means, like, type in the chat if you guys can, and if you're able to.
That was me.
Yeah.
I was testing.
Okay. Beautiful. So I think that the piece that I want to do now is just transition, and if we don't get any questions or comments, to let people know if they're feeling called and intrigued and like you might want more of this kind of thing about the retreat that we're doing at the end of October. And then really also to just seed the possibility, you know, this little triad of women has come together. Nikki Weaver is not here with us tonight. She is a yoga teacher and actress, and just a very beautiful spirit with a lot, just a lot more than can be encompassed in those two descriptors. And we have come together and are really feeling like we don't know exactly what this is going to be over time, but we're feeling called to kind of to create experiences like this. So if the end of October isn't really singing for you, but you have, you know, an interest in maybe an experience like this at another time, kind of stay connected. And we're hoping to do more and respond to what people would like. So but yeah, so this retreat at the end of October is really going to be focusing right on the place where we've left off tonight. So as we go on the journey, you know, it's wonderful to bring parts of yourself back to life, and to go, you know, to find these bones and to be with the old withered part of yourself that can call you back to life, even if she's not very well accepted by the rest of society, that part of us. But a lot of times we come, you know, very quickly, even after a transformative experience, we come up against obstacles. Like, we come up against very serious obstacles. And the frame of the retreat that starts on October 26th is going to be using the story of Bluebeard, which we won't tell completely tonight, but it has to do with what happens when everything seems good and you're ready to move into this, you know, creative possibility of your life, but then all of a sudden everything turns on its head and you discover some terrible secret frightens you to your very soul, really very threatening. You come right up against it. It's not going to work. It's not going to be possible. How do you transform? How do you create even from that kind of a place? And we're going to go through a journey over the days that we're together, starting on Thursday night and then through Sunday, that will involve yoga, healing foods. We're definitely going to meet some herb and plant friends, and work together and independently, directly with our creativity, to have a real, active, engaged experience of not just thinking about and exploring this story, but literally creating together. And the parameters of exactly what that creation will look like are really open. So it could be everything from something that you might think of as a, you know, quote unquote artistic endeavor, whether it's like something that you would write and share with others, whether it's like doing a scene of, you know, creating a mini play or a skit or a song, or, you know, it could also be creating a response to a challenge in your life, creating a plan to a plan to work on an issue that really calls to your heart, that is important to you in local or national politics. This could be very broad of like what this creative piece actually means. But we are about doing something during this retreat and not just like lounging and enjoying ourselves. You're going to be restored and brought to life, but not by just like, I don't know, laying on a sun lounger. You're going to actually bring something forward and bring yourself forward at the same time, is the idea. Is there anything you would add to this, Atieno?
The one little piece I would add is, and it's actually something that came to me while I was, you know, turning into a woman from a wolf a minute ago. Wolves are pack animals, and women are pack animals. I mean, not wearing packs, but like your community, right, is so important. And so a lot of magic and creativity happens in concert. And so that's another thing that this retreat is about, is finding your sisters who, you know, having like a very safe place to connect, because connecting does not always feel safe, you know, socially, even in like with very nice people, or, you know, but we as facilitators are committed to creating, you know, setting things up in such a way that that safety is present, and that the connection can happen, authentic connection and support. And the group process is itself a creative, a creation. I don't know who's creating it, but it's real. And so
yeah,
that's the only piece that I would add, is it's not just about your individual expression, about how that expression is enhanced by other people's expression, so that the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm. And I just had an insight about this that feels like both really strange for me to say as a vegan, because I have no problem with wolves hunting, but the idea of me hunting is very uncomfortable. And also as a person who has had a lifelong resistance to group work until very recently, because I was always the kid in school who was like, oh, well, like Melanie cares and like she will do the work and like the rest of us won't do anything. And so like I had this really, I just had a really contentious relationship with groups like for a lot of my life. Even though I wanted it to be different, but I just was like, if I would have heard someone say what you just said, Atieno, the thought that I would have had would be like, well, why would I possibly think that I will experience sisterhood with random women who just happen to go on the same retreat as me? Probably I will end up not really liking people, or like it won't, like I'll be the one that doesn't fit in, or like I'm going to want to be an introvert by myself. Like that would be the feeling I would have had in the past. But what I know is true is that wolves in a pack don't have a bond because they just happen to all be related or just by accident. The bonding happens because they hunt cooperatively. They instinctively and through very clear communication, they work together to achieve a common goal. And that is something that bonds people to one another, especially when the goal is a little bit challenging. And so what I really know and trust after a lifetime of doing creative work, like whenever I have been in a creative challenge with people, even as hairy as it might get at certain points when you're hitting those points of difference or points of tension and disagreement, when you stay with the process, the bond that is realized on the other side is real and genuine. And it never has the feeling of being, of like, I got stuck in this random group by accident. It is in the effort of making something happen that we come to feel genuine connection and sisterhood. And that's part of why we're making this an active experience too, because I think it's really true that, I don't know if you would say this in your practice, Atieno, but it's maybe more radical for someone like me who's focused a lot on the physical body. I think that the thing that my clients are suffering with more than anything else is the pervasive and toxic effects of isolation on human beings. And so I think that being able to come together, learn how to come together and create for yourself and also with a whole of others, this is a skill that we all need to be, whether you come on this retreat or not, like, let's all activate our creativity about, like, how do we get more groups of women together, creating together, bonding, being part of something, and bringing ourselves back to life together.
Yeah. I had to work and felt very challenged throughout my life with what I call community stuff. The part, being able to feel like, oh, I belong. I walk into a room and I belong, and people want a piece of me, and I'm, it's generous of me to share myself with them, and I can receive, and all, for some reason that very early on, I developed this self-story of, I'm different, I'm separate, I can't receive, I can't belong. And so that's been a lifelong healing journey for me, and one of the reasons I think I'm so drawn to group work. And I feel like some people, they really have that part of themselves intact, and they really can, whether because the kind of family experience they had in their family of origin or the culture they came from. And I think for many of us in this country, it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rupture.
Sure.
Some kind of historic trauma, and we don't even remember that it happened, but that is part of healing ourselves, is reclaiming that community person. Probably if we don't, we're not going to survive on the planet. Like, I think it's also a very important piece of what we're going to need to figure out to the huge problems that we're facing as a species. So not to like put too much on this retreat.
Yeah, please, like, let's not set up expectation that we're going to save the species. That's too much pressure. Oh my good Lord. Well, if it helps, like, for, like, just to keep things humble, like, Charlotte definitely just, like, sat her butthole directly on my leg and then, like, scooted along and then licked the exact place where, like, she's now licking where her butthole was. So, just no delusions of grandeur, guys. Like, this, it's very real right now. And I feel that I need to go and wash my legs soon. So I feel like we should I feel like we can wrap up soon. But what's the best plan for people who might like to hear more about the retreat? Because we do have, I'm not sure exactly how many spots we have left. I'm not sure I have track of that, but I know that we do have at least a couple, and that we're also, we're kind of in a thought process about, like, can we offer a little bit of scholarship or, break on a rate for people who want to come but might have to get travel and things like that. So we would want to be in conversation with you guys if you're interested. And even if you're not necessarily interested for October, but if you want to just sort of be in the loop for future possibilities. So what do you think is the best? Just email?
Yeah, you can email either one of us. I said my email earlier. It's atieno@gmail.com. And you can also read about the retreat there's a web page on my website. Go to atienobird.com under services.
Yes. We'll post that under the recording. I don't know why I didn't even remember that, but we'll post that link under the recording. And then I put my email into the chat as well. It's just melanie@psycheandsoma.com. But you can, you guys can Facebook me. You guys have my contact information. You know where to find me. It's not that hard. So no excuses. We're all so connected. You guys, most of you probably have my phone number as well, which is also fine. I love you all.
It was great how you have the sense of the community that's here, because I'm used to working with a live group and I have never done this format before. And to me, how present the people that I don't even know who are listening to us feel to me, because you're being your community self.
That's so awesome. And I feel so lucky. There's a core group of people who, and everybody can't show up to everything, but you guys know who you are. My core group of people who come to stuff. And so I feel you out there and I know who you are. And it does. And it's so cool. It's so cool that you guys actually have a collective vibe, and that it's palpable to someone who hasn't met you before is so cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I would love to meet with you.
Yes.
So I don't know how this all reflects the retreat, but it was great. I want to thank you for letting me in on the format.
Yeah, thank you. I think this will be, this is just a little taste, and amuse-bouche or something. The actual experience of being in the retreat will be different, and the food is going to be a really big focus. That's maybe why this food metaphor is coming. Atieno is really in the know with cool food things that are happening. They're happening outside of Charlottesville, and so there's going to be cool food stuff happening too. So it will be different, but I think this is enough to get a little sense of where we're headed or what we might be doing.
Yeah, and click on the links in the description just to see some visuals too of the Blue Ridge and where it's going to be, the very, very magical spot in the world.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. I'm going to go and take a shower, and I will talk to all of you very soon. Send us an email in the next day or two if you're thinking about this, because we do want to get everything sort of wrapped up and figured out, since we're a month away from the retreat. So yes, do not delay if you are interested, and we will figure out what will work.
Thank you, Melanie.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for being here.